Hello. Looking back, I suppose you could say Lauren and I were an unlikely match. I was the quiet, responsible one, the kind of guy who always had a plan, always played it safe. She was the opposite. Lauren had a way of drawing people in, of making everything feel larger than life. She was unpredictable, a little wild, and completely mesmerizing. I met her during my last year of college. It was at a mutual friend's party, one of those crowded, sweaty gatherings where the music was too loud and the drinks were too strong. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had an exam to study for, but my roommate had convinced me to go. Lauren was the center of attention that night. She was laughing, dancing, throwing her head back like she didn't have a care in the world. And then, somehow, she noticed me. I don't remember what she said to me first, but I do remember the way she smiled, like she had just figured out some secret about me that even I didn't know. We talked for hours, tucked away in some quieter corner of the party. She had this way of making everything sound exciting, like life was an adventure waiting to happen. By the time I left, I knew I needed to see her again. And I did. Over and over. Lauren was impulsive, spontaneous in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. She'd call me in the middle of the night just to drive out to the beach and watch the sunrise. She'd plan weekend trips on a whim, dragging me along before I could come up with a reason to say no. She had this infectious energy, like she was always chasing something just out of reach. And in those early days, I would have followed her anywhere. We fell hard and fast. 2 years later, I proposed. I was nervous as hell, but when I saw the way her eyes lit up, I knew I had made the right decision. She threw her arms around me, laughing, saying yes over and over again. I thought I had found my forever. For a while, life felt perfect. We got married, moved into a house together, started building a life. I worked long hours, trying to set us up for the future, while Lauren bounced between passions, photography, yoga, social media. She was always searching for something new. It was part of what made her, her. At least, that's what I told myself. In those early years, I never doubted us. Not once. I had no idea how much that would change. The first few years of our marriage felt like a dream. We were young, in love, and had our whole future ahead of us. Lauren was still the same spontaneous, adventurous woman I had fallen for, and I found myself caught up in the excitement of our life together. She always had a new idea, a new plan, weekend getaways, last-minute road trips, hobbies that would consume her for months at a time before she moved on to something else. I didn't mind. I liked the way she kept things interesting, how she pulled me out of my routine and made life feel unpredictable in the best way. I was the one who grounded us, the planner, the steady hand, while she was the spark that made everything more exciting. It felt like we balanced each other out. We traveled a lot in those early years. Weekend trips to the mountains, lazy beach vacations, exploring cities we had never been to before. I loved those moments, just the two of us, disconnected from the rest of the world. It felt like nothing could touch us. But life always finds a way of settling down. Over time, the trips became less frequent. The responsibilities piled up, work, bills, obligations. I started working longer hours, determined to build a stable future for us. Lauren supported me, or at least she said she did, but I could tell she was restless. She started picking up new hobbies, going out with friends more often, filling her time with anything that made life feel less routine. I should have seen it then. The signs were there, subtle at first, but there. Lauren had always been independent, but now there was a distance I couldn't quite place. She still smiled, still laughed, still made me feel like the luckiest man alive, but sometimes, just for a moment, I would catch her staring off into the distance, lost in thought. And when I asked her about it, she would just shake her head, brush it off with a joke or a kiss. I believed her. I had no reason not to. Looking back, I wish I had paid more attention. But back then, I was happy. I thought she was too. And for a while, maybe she was. As the years passed, something between Lauren and me began to shift. It wasn't a dramatic change, not at first. It was subtle, creeping in so slowly that I barely noticed it happening. She was still the same vibrant, unpredictable woman I had married, but the excitement that once defined our relationship had started to fade. We had settled into a routine, the way all couples do. Work, home, sleep, repeat. The spontaneity that once kept things fresh had given way to predictability, and I could feel Lauren growing restless. She threw herself into new interests, fitness classes, photography, a brief attempt at learning French. Each time, she was consumed by whatever new obsession had taken hold of her, but nothing seemed to stick. It was like she was searching for something, chasing after some feeling she couldn't quite reach. I tried to be supportive, but I could tell something was off. She was more distracted, more distant. She'd spend hours scrolling through her phone, laughing at messages I wasn't a part of. She started going out more, meeting up with friends I had never heard of before. When I asked her about it, she always had an answer: new friends from yoga, a coworker's birthday, just a casual night out. I didn't question her. Why would I? We had been together for years. She was my wife, my partner. If she said she was just having fun, just trying to break the monotony, I believed her. But deep down, I felt something I couldn't quite name. It was little things at first. The way she suddenly cared so much about her appearance, spending extra time getting ready, buying new clothes, wearing perfume to places that never seemed to require it before. The way she started locking her phone, something she had never done in all our years together. The way she would smile at a message, then tilt her screen just slightly away from me. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just being paranoid. After all, relationships change. People change. It was natural, wasn't it? Lauren had always loved to travel. Even after our spontaneous trips slowed down, she would still bring up new destinations, places she wanted to see, experiences she wanted to have. So when she mentioned a trip with her friends, I didn't think much of it. It's just a girl's trip, she said. A little getaway to unwind. It made sense. She had been feeling restless, and I wanted her to be happy. I encouraged her to go, even helped her pack. She kissed me before she left, her lips soft and sweet against mine, and told me she'd miss me. But something about it felt different. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way she had been so secretive about the details, who exactly was going, where they were staying, what their plans were. Or maybe it was the way she seemed almost too excited, the way she had been glued to her phone in the days leading up to the trip, always texting someone, always smiling at messages I never got to see. I brushed it off. I trusted Lauren. But the first night she was gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She didn't text me much, which was unusual. Lauren had always been the type to check in, to send little updates, random pictures, messages saying she missed me. But now, when I texted her, hours would pass before I got a reply. And when she did respond, her messages were short, generic. Having fun, talk later. Just relaxing, love you. I tried calling her once, just to hear her voice. She didn't pick up. A few minutes later, she texted, saying she was out with the girls, and that she'd call me tomorrow. Something was off. I didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid, controlling type who couldn't let his wife enjoy a vacation without suspecting the worst. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something that sent a chill through me. I didn't even know for sure who she was with. She had mentioned the girls, but she never said their names. Usually, when she made plans, I knew who was involved: her best friend, a coworker, someone she had talked about before. But this time, nothing. Just vague mentions of friends. I reached for my phone and scrolled through our texts. The more I read, the more I realized how little she had actually told me. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. But for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure. The second day of Lauren's trip felt even worse than the first. I tried to keep myself busy, but my mind kept circling back to the same thought. Something wasn't right. I told myself I was being irrational, that she deserved time away, that I was overthinking things. But the longer she was gone, the harder it became to convince myself. She barely texted. When she did, her messages were even shorter than before. Busy day? Love you. Or out late, I'll call tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. She had never been like this before. Even when she was away, she would send pictures, tell me about her day, make me feel like I was still part of her world. Now, she felt like a ghost. I tried to let it go. I really did. But then I checked her social media. Lauren had always been active online, constantly posting pictures, updates, little glimpses into her life. But this time, nothing. No check-ins, no photos, no tags from her friends. It was like she had vanished. That's what finally made me start looking closer. I clicked on the profiles of the friends I thought she might be with. Nothing. No pictures, no mentions of a trip. When I checked their stories, it looked like they were home, living their normal lives. Who was she with? I scrolled back through our texts again, trying to piece together details. But the more I read, the more I realized how vague she had been. It wasn't just this trip. Lately, everything had been vague. She was out more. busier, always distracted, always checking her phone. I got up and started pacing. My heart was pounding. I had been ignoring the signs for months, telling myself that nothing was wrong, that Lauren wouldn't do something like that I had no reason to doubt her. But now, with her gone, I could see it clearly. The late nights, the way she had suddenly become more private, the unexplained mood swings, distant one moment, affectionate the next. Something was happening. I just didn't know what yet. By the third day of Lauren's trip, the unease inside me had turned into something heavier, something I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. I went through the motions of my day, went to work, answered emails, made small talk when necessary, but my mind was elsewhere. Every moment I wasn't distracted, my thoughts circled back to her. The silence, the vague replies, the growing distance between us. I told myself I was overthinking things. I tried to be rational, to remind myself that she was allowed to have fun, that I was probably making something out of nothing. But the truth was, I no longer believed my own excuses. Something was wrong. I could feel it, deep in my gut, a slow and steady pressure that wouldn't let up. That night, I lay in bed, staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Normally, Lauren would send pictures when she traveled, snapshots of the beach, a cocktail in her hand, a funny selfie with her friends. But this time, there was nothing. No check-ins, no updates, no proof that she was even where she claimed to be. I checked her social media again, hoping for some kind of reassurance, but it was just as empty as before. Even her friends, the ones she supposedly went with, hadn't posted anything about the trip. I scrolled through our texts, reading them over and over, looking for something I had missed. But the more I looked, the more obvious it became she had been vague on purpose. I had never questioned it before, never had a reason to doubt her, but now the gaps in her stories were glaring. Who, exactly, was she with? Why hadn't she mentioned names? And why did I feel like I already knew the answer, even if I wasn't ready to admit it? A thought crossed my mind then, one I had pushed away before but could no longer ignore. If she wasn't where she said she was, where was she? And if she wasn't with her friends, then who was she with? My pulse quickened as I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I had to find something, anything, that would put my mind at ease. But deep down, I knew I wasn't looking for reassurance. I was looking for confirmation of what I had been too afraid to admit. As I clicked through our phone records, my hands felt clammy, my breathing uneven. I hesitated before opening them, as if delaying the moment would somehow keep the truth at bay. But when I finally saw the list of calls and messages, my stomach dropped. There were far more calls than usual, and they weren't to me. One number stood out immediately. It was repeated over and over, sometimes late at night, sometimes for long stretches during the day. My mind raced as I stared at the screen, the digits burning into my memory. This wasn't normal. This wasn't some casual conversation with a coworker or a friend. This was something else. Something secret. Something hidden. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, but I knew better. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, the foundation of our marriage cracking in real time. I hadn't found undeniable proof yet, but I didn't need to, because in that moment, I knew Lauren was lying to me. And I wasn't sure I was ready to find out just how deep the betrayal ran. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't slow down. The number I had seen on our phone records haunted me, looping through my head like a bad song. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting, that there could be an explanation, that maybe I was just letting paranoia take hold. But no matter how many excuses I tried to make, the facts didn't change. Lauren had been in contact with someone, constantly, for months. And now, while she was supposedly on a trip with her friends, she had been messaging and calling this person more than ever. I needed to know who it was. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the unknown number. My heart was pounding. If I called it, if I heard a man's voice on the other end, there would be no more room for doubt. The last bit of hope I had, the small, desperate part of me that still wanted to believe in her, would be gone. I hovered over the call button for what felt like an eternity, my thumb shaking. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I copied the number and pasted it into a search engine. Most of the time, personal numbers don't lead anywhere, but sometimes you get lucky. I clicked through different results, my chest tightening with every second that passed. And then I found something. A name. A man's name. I didn't recognize it at first, but as I stared at the screen, something clicked. It was a name Lauren had mentioned before casually, in passing, months ago. She had called him a friend. Someone from her gym. Someone who had helped her with her workouts. I had barely thought about it at the time. But now, seeing his name connected to those endless calls and texts, I felt like my stomach had dropped out of my body. I sat there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. I thought back to all the times she had left the house late, saying she needed to clear her head or go for a run. The sudden interest in fitness, the extra hours at the gym, the way she had started dressing differently, the way she had started looking at me differently. I had ignored the signs. Or maybe I had seen them all along and just refused to believe them. I clenched my fists, my whole body tense. I wanted to smash my phone against the wall, to throw it across the room, to do something that would make this awful, suffocating feeling go away. But there was no escaping it. Lauren was lying to me. And I was almost certain I knew why. I had spent days drowning in uncertainty, feeling like I was going crazy, but now everything was coming into focus. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't insecurity. This was real. The only thing left to do now was get proof. And I knew exactly how to get it. The fourth night of Lauren's trip, I had stopped expecting anything from her. The routine was the same as short, distant texts, vague excuses for why she couldn't call. Busy day. Love you, red heart. Going to bed soon, exhausted. It had become predictable, almost rehearsed. She was keeping me just close enough to avoid suspicion, but I already knew. I didn't need proof anymore. But proof was exactly what I got. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, mindlessly flipping through old pictures of us. I didn't know why I was doing it. Maybe some part of me wanted to remind myself of who she used to be, of what we used to have before everything started falling apart. I had just closed out of the gallery when my screen lit up with a notification. A message. From Lauren. And attached to it, a video. My breath caught in my throat. My pulse spiked. I sat up, staring at the screen, my mind scrambling for an explanation. My thumb hesitated over the play button. I already knew this wasn't meant for me, but I tapped it anyway. The screen flickered. The video started. Lauren was in a hotel room, the dim lighting casting a soft glow over her skin. She was lying on a bed, tangled in sheets, her hair messy, her lips parted in breathless laughter. And she wasn't alone. A man, him, was behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his face buried against her neck. His voice was low, teasing. Hers, playful, eager. Then movement. The camera tilted, just slightly, just enough for me to see their bodies pressed together. The way she looked at him. The way she had once looked at me. My stomach twisted violently. And then, the video disappeared. Just like that, it was gone. The message vanished before my eyes, deleted almost instantly. As if it had never been there. As if it had been sent by mistake. But it was too late. I had seen enough. I sat there, my entire body rigid, my phone still clutched in my hand. My breathing was shallow, uneven. The weight of what I had just witnessed pressed down on me like a crushing force. Lauren had sent that video to me. Whether by accident or some cruel twist of fate, she had given me the undeniable truth. And she had realized her mistake immediately. She knew. She knew I had seen. I imagined her, panicking the second she hit send. Scrambling to delete it, to erase the evidence before I could open it. As if that would make it all go away. As if I could unsee what had been burned into my mind. My hands clenched into fists. My jaw locked. My entire body trembled with something I couldn't quite name, rage, devastation, something in between. This was it. The moment where everything shattered. Lauren had destroyed our marriage with a single mistake. And now, it was my turn to decide what happened next. The moment the video disappeared from my screen, I knew Lauren had realized her mistake. My phone was still in my hand, my grip so tight my knuckles ached. My heart pounded in my chest, a violent, erratic rhythm that drowned out everything else. She had tried to erase it, tried to undo what couldn't be undone. But I had seen it. I knew. I waited. I stared at my phone, waiting for the inevitable damage control, the frantic texts, the desperate attempt to gaslight me into thinking I hadn't seen what I just saw. My mind raced ahead of her, already predicting her excuses. It was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I wasn't thinking. But the message never came. Instead, I watched as the dots appeared typing. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. She didn't know what to say. I sat there in silence, my breathing slow and controlled, my mind eerily calm. It was over. She knew it. I knew it. There was no coming back from this. And now, it was my turn. I got out of bed, my movements deliberate, methodical. I went to the front door and changed the locks. Lauren had taken a set of keys with her, but they were useless now. I didn't care where she went after her little vacation. She just wasn't coming back here. Next, I gathered her things. I didn't throw them, didn't break anything, didn't let my emotions take over. I simply packed. Clothes, shoes, makeup, jewelry, every piece of her that still remained in my home. I stuffed into garbage bags and set them by the door. I wasn't going to burn them. I wasn't going to destroy them. She just wasn't getting them back. I worked in silence, my mind eerily clear, as if my body had decided for me that this was how it had to be. There was no need for a screaming match, no need for a confrontation. Lauren had played her game. Now, I was playing mine. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Lauren, hey. I didn't reply. A minute later, another message. Lauren, can you call me? I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, slowly, I typed. Me, don't bother coming home. You don't live here anymore. I saw the dots appear typing, then stop, then start again. Lauren, please, just let me explain. Me, explain what? That you accidentally sent me proof you've been fucking someone else? Silence. I tossed my phone onto the table and leaned back against the couch. I could imagine her now panicking, pacing, scrambling for an excuse, trying to figure out how to fix the unfixable. It was too late. The next morning, I sent her a final text. Her things were gone. Her key wouldn't work. I was done. I blocked her number before she could respond. She had made her choice. And now, I had made mine. The morning after I blocked Lauren, I woke up to silence. No texts, no calls, no frantic attempts to explain herself. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with a message from my wife. Except she wasn't my wife anymore. Not really. She had ended our marriage the second she pressed record on that video. I got out of bed and moved through the house like a man clearing out a crime scene. I wanted every trace of her gone. The framed photos of us? Thrown in a box. Her toothbrush, her shampoo, her stupid scented candles that she never actually lit? Tossed into a bag. The last remnants of the life we had built together were now nothing more than junk. I was halfway through scrubbing down the kitchen counter when there was a knock at the door. I already knew who it was. I didn't rush to open it. I took my time, wiped my hands, straightened my shirt. When I finally turned the knob and pulled the door open, there she was. Lauren. She looked different, nervous. She wasn't wearing the confident, playful smile I had fallen for all those years ago. Her eyes darted over my face, searching for something. Forgiveness? Understanding? I wasn't sure, but I knew she wouldn't find it. She exhaled shakily. Can we talk? I didn't move. There's nothing left to talk about. She bit her lip, shifting on her feet. I didn't mean for you to see that. I almost laughed. Almost. But you meant to do it. She flinched, her mouth opening, then closing again. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. I made a mistake, she finally whispered. Please, let's just... I shook my head. No, Lauren, you made a choice. Her eyes filled with something guilt, regret, maybe even fear. She knew now. Knew that this wasn't some fight we could move past, that there were no words that could undo what had been done. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Her face crumbled. Where are my things? I nodded toward the curb, where several garbage bags sat waiting. Right there. Her eyes widened. You threw my stuff out? I shrugged. You threw out our marriage. Seems fair. For the first time, something inside her cracked. You're really doing this? I met her gaze, my voice steady. You already did. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stood there, shoulders tense, breathing uneven. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the desperate attempt to find an angle, a way back in. But there wasn't one. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and nodded, as if accepting the inevitable. She turned, walked down the steps, and grabbed the bags. She didn't look back. I watched her go, feeling nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just relief. Lauren was gone. And I was free. The day Lauren left, I expected to feel something: grief, rage, maybe even regret. But as I watched her car disappear down the street, the only thing I felt was weightless. Like I had been carrying something heavy for far too long, and now, finally, it was gone. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her texts, her calls, her excuses. I wasn't checking my phone, hoping for something, anything, that would make this all feel like a misunderstanding. The truth had been shoved in my face, raw and undeniable. And now, I could finally let go. The first few days alone felt strange. The house was quieter, emptier, and at times, it didn't feel like mine anymore. Every room held a memory, But instead of feeling nostalgic, I felt disgusted. The couch where we used to sit together? Had she texted him from there? The kitchen where we had cooked dinner? Had she planned her meetups with him while I stood right next to her? I couldn't live in a house filled with ghosts. So, I purged it. I got rid of everything that reminded me of her. I painted the bedroom walls, replaced the bed sheets, threw away the little things she had left behind. The pictures? Burned. The gifts she had given me over the years? Gone. The wedding ring? Buried at the bottom of my sock drawer, forgotten. It was like erasing her from my life one item at a time. Then came the messages. Lauren tried to reach out a few times, through different numbers, social media, even mutual friends. At first, it was apologies. Then came the excuses. Then the anger. She told people I had overreacted, that I had thrown away our marriage over one mistake, as if she wasn't the one who had shattered it first. I ignored every attempt. She had already taken too much of my time, my energy, my love. She didn't get another second. Weeks passed, and something unexpected happened. I started feeling better. The weight in my chest slowly lifted. I found myself smiling more, laughing at stupid things, actually enjoying my own life. It wasn't easy, healing never is, but every day, the scars hurt a little less. One night, I stood outside on the porch, breathing in the cool air. For so long, I had been drowning in doubt and betrayal, in the wreckage of a love I thought would last forever. But now, I realized something. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't broken. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to whatever came next. Bye-bye.